Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Poetry at Lubber 1. We're going to start off tonight with a few words from our County Board Vice Chair, Katie Crystal, who's come to enjoy poetry with us under the stars. Please welcome Katie Crystal. Katherine, thank you so much for the warm welcome, and I'm so delighted to join you all this evening on this beautiful night that really does finally feel like autumn. I'm the Vice Chair of the Arlington County Board, the board's liaison to the Commission on the Arts, and an enthusiast for the arts in Arlington. And I am so grateful to Katherine and everyone here for making sure that the literary arts are featured, as they should be, in any robust and artistic and creative community. I am so glad to be celebrating the poets and poetry of written in Arlington with you tonight. As you all may know, this book, Written in Arlington, was envisioned as a portrait in poetry of our community, and is salute to the diversity of voices and writers within it. And of course, because what would an artistic celebration be without some statistics, a few numbers, this collection features 150 poems in 4 languages, English, Spanish, Russian, and Hindi, and 87 different poets from all over the world, from New Zealand and Siberia to right here in Arlington County. And each one of those poets, each piece of poetry is connected in some way to the county, to us. Our poets are from all ages and backgrounds and birthplaces. Their careers are equally varied. Students, writers, teachers, lobbyists, journalists, counselors. Some are detainees at the Arlington County Detention Facility. And there are also voices of commuters and tourists just passing through. The work to create and publish Written in Arlington was funded by an Arlington Artists grant to the editor and inaugural poet laureate of Arlington County, Katherine E. And in fact, almost all of the facets of the book were created and designed here in Arlington, from the cover art created by Anya Getter, an Arlington-based artist, and the cover design by poet and artist Sushmita Mazumdar, who you will hear from later this evening. The editor is Richard Peabody of Arlington's own Haycock Press, and I believe Richard is with us tonight as well. So without further ado, I am so glad to be here tonight, enjoying the artistry and the beauty of the written word on this lovely evening. And thank you for having me. Thank you, Queen. And before we get started with our program, we're also going to have a few words from our current poet laureate, Karapetkova.
Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. I am beyond excited to be here with you this evening. This is the first event that I've been able to host as Poet Laureate. My tenure as Laureate began 2 summers ago, right at the beginning of the pandemic. And no matter your age, no matter your demographic, the pandemic has not left any of us unscathed. And poetry and the arts are one of the main ways that we can come together as a community to celebrate, to heal. So thank you so much for being a part of this celebration with us tonight. As Katie mentioned, this is an amazing anthology that celebrates poetry in Arlington County, and I hope you will enjoy the show.
Thank you, Holly, and thank you everybody for being here. My name is Katherine E. And before I even say anything more, I want to say thank you not only to Holly, but to Katie Crystal for coming out tonight, and to thanks for everybody here for being in the audience, and to my poets. We got so many amazing poets from the Arlington community here with us. Welcome. So I am the editor and the curator of Written in Arlington and Spoken in Arlington, and I will tell you more about Spoken in Arlington in a minute. But as Katie said, I'll tell you a little bit first about Written in Arlington, which is the print anthology of poets and poetry connected to Arlington, Virginia. It is a homemade, homegrown book. There are 150 poems, and they are from 87 poets, and those 87 poets at the moment live all over the world, but all of them at some time or another were here in Arlington, all connected, all different ways. Our cover artist is Anya Getter. She's also from Arlington. Our cover designer, as we heard earlier, is Sushmita Mazumdar, who's reading with us tonight. And of course, our publisher, Richard Peabody, who is manning the book sales table, and he runs Haycock Press here in Arlington, one of the small presses that we have in our community. This collection was funded by a 2020
Arlington County Individual Artist Grant that I received, and it was administered through the Arlington Cultural Affairs Division of Arlington Economic Development and the Arlington Commission for the Arts. So those are the people that you need to know about if you're interested in supporting arts in this community. And let me say a word about that. I'm going to put on my political hat for a second. Without the individual artist grant that I received for this project, this book would not exist. In FY 2022, that is this year, Arlington County awarded a total of 5 individual artist grants covering all the disciplines. That is music, dance, writing, everything. So we spent a total of about $38,000 on individual artist grants. And 2 of the new grants, by the way, went to writers who have work written in Arlington. So there will be more writing about Arlington. But by way of comparison to Arlington, with our 5 artist grants, last year the District of Columbia awarded over $2 million in individual artist grants, including around $350,000 given just to writers, to 52 writers. So there were, of course, many more awards in music, design, dance, teaching, theater, visual arts, and more. So all of us know what it means to live in Arlington, how expensive it is to live in Arlington, and most people know that none of us are getting rich off of making art in our community. So here's my pitch for tonight. If supporting local artists and writers is important to you, please let people like Katie Crystal and our elected officials know that, and tell them that you'd like them to do more to support individual artists. And you personally can do something right now to support Arlington writers. Please buy their books. The pandemic has been devastating for book sales, and if publishers aren't selling books, they don't have the money to publish more books. So please support our publisher, Paycock Press, and the many writers who you see here tonight, and many other writers you will discover in the book, because so many of them have brought wonderful books into the world. So tonight, now I'm taking off my political hat, the biographies for tonight, for the people who are reading tonight, are in your program. And also in the program, on the back, is a QR code. And if you position your phone on that QR code, it will take you to my website, which is KatherineYoungPoet.com, for more information about Written in Arlington, including video links to anthology readings that many of our 87 poets have done on Zoom over the last year or so. Also on that webpage is information about our sister project, which is Spoken in Arlington. It's the ongoing digital component of Written in Arlington. Spoken in Arlington is a YouTube channel where you can find videos from some of the poets you'll see tonight, as well as other Arlington poets. And you'll also find information on the webpage about how to submit your video poems to be part of this living digital collection of Arlington poetry. Okay, now we're coming to our program, The Story of Written in Arlington. And as Katie Crystal said, this collection is a portrait in poetry of the community where we live and work. All of the writing in the book comes from the last few decades or so, and some of you may have encountered some of it if you were riding the buses because of the Moving Words program. That program was developed by poet Kim Roberts, who many of you know. She also has worked in this book. 5 of the poets from whom you'll hear tonight with work in Written in Arlington are no longer with us. And so we thought we would share their vision as well with you. The book starts with the Potomac River, coming down the river by air or by water towards the land. And so to start us off, here is poet Martha Sanchez Lowry to read Marking the River and Luminous Green Rooms, 2 of the many poems Written in Arlington about the Potomac. Marty.
Thank you, Arlington County, for hosting us. This is a beautiful anthology. I'm so proud to be included. This poem takes place when I was a truant schoolgirl on the Potomac River. Marking the river. School is a river, daydreaming out of tall windows, a cross-eyed watch of the silver flowing still. Your mother thought you a little slow, but learning was a wild place on the river's edge where you set feast of honeysuckle on broad green leaves, till they called you late from recess, back to the map-making and charting and intoning of river thought. Then the run home in the river-making rain, hail and thunder defiant, watching the river-making that ran between the cobblestones. Late and much later, there's spring snow, petal pink, drifting on the road, borders of shameless color, sloping away from the embankments, and the river is now marked by wires and silver flags, and it is a known place that you could mark yourself in that same way, single skull cutting the water, so close to the mark, and going forward faster than the river itself. The second poem, Luminous Green Rooms. Here we are in one of Arlington's green cathedrals. I think what we love about Arlington is how much green there is and how much it feels like cathedrals. The luminous green rooms. In that luminous green room, it is the everyday, the bandit day, the swerving on the road day, international, transnational mallards and Canada geese crossing the interstate. In the glass, the flickering green and blue and the awe. Was this here years ago? Was this yesterday? That you are here, that you do everything here, that you put on your mascara routine, that you sing intensely off-key in this intimate space of speed and direction, and of a light, like all natural surprises, an old millionaire you happen to know is reading in his car, watching the lights turn red to red to red, his Hunter Oldsmobile rusting, and you surprise the loneliness there. A cat on your neck, 6 rose bushes in the back seat, and the dirt of a busy life. Cellophane and yellowy magazines on the floor, stopped at that red light, your life visible, your everyday moving so fast. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. After the poems about the river, we leave the river and climb uphill to Rosslyn, where there are a number of poems in the book, and then to Courthouse, where poet Cod Evening pauses to reflect on the incredible changes in Arlington over the last few decades in unbuilding. Cod Evening.
I should say that this unbuilding is for Bee, and Bee's a friend of mine whose grandfather owned most of the dry cleaners in Arlington, so there's sort of a double connection. They demolished the building this week that stood for years near the courthouse. It reminded me of you and your wife because we watched the fireworks from its roof 5 months before your winter wedding. As I saw the wrecking ball whack masonry walls, heard demolition hammers chop floor slabs, breathed clouds of concrete dust, I was reminded of fireworks. When its frame became clearer, when I understood its structure, the relationship between columns and girders, I saw unbuilding as like your marriage, which failed to last 3 seasons. Should she have left sooner, admitted the lost attraction, said she was drawn to you no longer? You'll never know why the designs failed, why she stopped loving. Your best man in church and witness in court, I played the same part, promising to serve as a rubble chute, carrying debris from the top of the building to the transfer box, to the street. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. From Courthouse, the poems in the book wind through a number of North Arlington neighborhoods, including Westover. So here's poet Madeline Rosenberg on a Westover institution, Ayers Hardware.
Hi, this poem is just called Ayers. The man says, I could probably find the Holy Grail in here if I look hard enough, but he is neither religious nor an archaeologist, and he finds instead an egg timer, molly bolts, copper pipes, a batik scarf that would never be mistaken for a shroud. plaster of Paris, mouse traps, baseball bats, suet, a mason jar that will store brandied peaches, too fermented to eat, at some anonymous supper. He leaves with seeds and a vow to date.
Thanks, Madeline. Sort of flowing naturally from Westover and the beer garden there, which is also celebrated in our poem, which you're not going to hear tonight, written in Arlington by Ben Natalie. There is also a section on nightlife in Arlington and beyond, which includes several poems about music. So we're going to hear now one of those poems from the late Alexandra Delane Haley, who was born in Arlington and returned here to Columbia Gardens Cemetery after she died in a car accident in 2018. In 2014, while she was still an undergraduate at VCU, she was crowned one of the inaugural poet laureates for Prince William County. Her poem, Between Black and White, will be read tonight by her mother, Kathy Haley.
Thank you. This poem includes a French line near the end that means, I'm useless now, but I won't always be. Between black and white. Harmony on my side. Hands caress my body. Vintage carved mahogany. Your long calloused fingers beat down on me. I am no drum. My tearing strings cry, breathing dust between my keys. My C notes blue and my B's red. Man-made, created from trees, deconstructed. It's not dark that causes danger. It's the way you move about, pressing me down beneath you. I am no drum. I will be worth more than just a visit. Break free from my container. Breathe clean. Je suis inutile maintenant, mais je ne serai pas. I am no drum. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Another of the Arlington poets who is no longer with us is Karapetkova, who worked for years at the Arlington County Public Works and in the county manager's office. So here's our own poet laureate, Holly, to read another poem about Arlington at night, Neon Rain at Midnight, by poet Carol Heller Nation.
Neon Rain at Midnight. My favorite intersection on rainy nights is Lee Highway at Spout Run Drive, when blooming Bradford pear trees glow ghost-like under streetlights as the road plunges into midnight, and neon lights on the corner pawn shop splash images of blue and rose guitars across shimmering wet black pavement to the rhythmic flash of traffic lights in bursts of red and green and gold, as the drugstore's open all-night sign beckons in red beyond the parking lot, empty save a solitary police cruiser and rainbow-colored pothole puddles, pretty as a painting on black velvet.
Thanks, Holly. After the poems about nightlife, Written in Arlington moves through poems about life by the light of day, including poems about fostering children, volunteering, and even spending time in the hospital. And the book then moves to poems about women and women's work, including poems such as Chocolate on the Wedding Dress from Jacqueline Jules and Diary of a Bad Housewife from Deanna Derrico. And here's one from Susan Notar, Biking the Washington and Old Dominion Trail.
Thanks, and thanks to many of you for coming out for poetry tonight. This poem, for many of us, have spent happy hours biking the trails around Arlington and along the river, And as I bike, I often think in kind of a meditative way, so this is what that poem is about. Biking the Washington and Old Dominion Trail. Fast, and it's windy and dusty. Sweat drips between her breasts. She clips her shoe onto the pedal, and she's melded to the bicycle as if to a lover. She pumps up hills, whooshes down them. She thinks perhaps the more miles she rides on this chrome alloy frame with Shimano parts, her calves clenching until she's sinew, this ache can be fixed as easily as a flat bicycle tire. Glue, a new tube, a gush of air, she'll be all right again. Enjoying the smell of the pine copses, seeing the startled deer leap into the underbrush as she passes by.
Thanks, Susan. Continuing on the theme of women's work and women's lives is Madeline Rosenberg's Leftovers.
Build a poem around turkey bone. Add bay leaf and thyme for flavor and run. And the last of the carrots, that they've hidden in the earth long enough to grow hermit's whiskers. Shave them then with a straight-edged knife and drop them, slice by slice, into the pot.
Thanks, Madeline. From women's work, the poems written in Arlington move to themes of atonement, grief, and loss, including a number of love poems. So here's Todd Abraham reading The Kent Narrows.
So many of you know my wife, Allison. I just, to clarify, she has blue eyes, so that'll be an important detail in this poem. The Kent Narrows. Also, this is back when there was a drawbridge. That gives you a sense of time. This is what I know. Your eyes always seem more green in my mind. That is what I'll keep. Everything else goes to the next the way it came to me. I'd like to think I'm giving more than I took, but I know selfishness. So in turn for keeping the memory of your eyes, I give you nakedness and afternoons alone together. I give you everything you told me and everything I thought. In turn for keeping, I understand the world through your eyes and see the stars moments before the sky. Feel you sitting on the last step, your feet bare to the sand, your eyes to the Atlantic, your back full to the sun setting. I'd always thought we'd lose our bodies and from there form wonder. I'd always thought we'd lose ourselves and form nothing. The line between wonder, nothing, is the unseen between the late afternoon and dark, where I am now, stopping near the end of a 2-mile backup at the Kent Narrows Bridge. With the road longer this late, the body moves outside, making the outside part of the body, making the darkness more lamp-black within me. These things move up through the stillness, through the body, up from the road to the sky. And waiting for the bridge to come down, I think of you heading up the stairs, your feet bare to the wood, your back full to the water, your eyes green to the sky.
Thank you, Todd. Our next poet is also writing about grief and loss. Here's Stephen Niezwicki to read Homefront.
It wasn't the sand that tore us apart, and it wasn't the job that made him leave. It was the words they said. It wasn't the bombs or shells, but rather the words in Washington that buried him in Afghanistan. The sand between his fingers now runs red under a false crusade for the drops of oil that fuel their needs. The way his body fell to stained sand, like the way he used to fall next to me into the crevices and folds of her bed. And I wish he was still laying next to me. Thank you.
should say, you know, this collection was put together long before the pandemic. But the next poem is still extremely timely for the day. Here's Aaron R. and Darkest Days, Loneliest Nights.
Before I begin, can we all just give a round of applause to Katherine for putting this event together? So I'm Aaron R. the poet, and I'm so excited to be here, so bear with me if I move around as I do this piece, okay? In my darkest day, in my loneliest night, on my knees I pray that I'll be all right. Is this the end of day? Will I ever get to see light? Praying to hear God say, my son, you'll be all right. I'm not worried about girls. I'm not worried about having fun. I just want to have a healthy day because so far I've had none. The things I thought that mattered, all like a mirror, they've shattered. I feel like I'm just stuck, dealing with all this bad luck. I've had thoughts about giving up. Yep. Thoughts about giving in. Feeling like I'm going to lose, even though I know I can win. If I can just stay strong, there's light ahead in the tunnel. All I gotta do is just hold on. Yeah, just stay strong. 'Cause in my darkest day, in my loneliest night, on my knees I pray that I'll be all right. Is this the end of day? Will I ever get to see light? Praying to hear God say, my son, you'll be all right. I'm not worried about wealth. I'm just worried about health. Those material wishes can all get stuck on the shelf. I'm just worried about self. I'm not worried about anyone else. This is a pain I've never felt. I guess it's the hand that I've been dealt. But it's a reason to it. Gotta find the silver lining. It's a season to it. God is doing some designing. Maybe it's refining to a cleansed soul. I'm still in my youth and I'm getting encouragement from the old. That I'll be strong again. Yeah, that I'll be me again. Keep him by my side and I'm destined to win. My thoughts went dark and I can't figure me out. Tears in my eyes as I just cried. And y'all know what came out. In my darkest day, in my loneliest night, on my knees I prayed that I'll be all right. Is this the end of day? Will I ever get to see light? And then I felt God say, my son, you're all right. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Earlier you heard Kathy Haley read a poem written by her daughter, the late Alexandra Delane Haley, and now here she is again to read Mourning Doves.
Thank you, Katherine. This poem begins with an epigraph from Gregory Orr. The epigraph from Gregory Orr is, "This is the reciprocity of love that outwits death." Mourning doves. Are they attracted by the assortment of nuts and berries, or the array of feeders hanging from rails and rhododendron? Do they seek company, brighter in color, faster in flight, the cardinals, familiar and familial nesters in our yard? She, translucent red and submerged under muted brown, camouflaged. He, flaunting festive feathers, crowned, a perennial showstopper. Narcissistic as he faces his reflection in car and patio mirrors. The goldfinches, brilliant yellow, tuxedo trim, black cap and tails, flitting from one feeder to another, pecking for seeds, rung to rung.
soaring into the apple tree, barely visible on its highest branches? Or are they our trinity of mourning doves, mottled and mellow, drawn to us by her autumn passing and the grief we suffer? Is their presence foreboding, preying on our dread of death, encouraging a rage contained within, but rarely released? Loss sings through coos of mourning doves, echoing coo, coo. Is their cooing a lament for her or a gift to mourners? A promise that our heartbreak is heard, our sorrow perceived? Akuo, say the Greeks. I listen and I understand. The doves, integral to life's mysteries, their bird line to the heavens, well documented in sacred stories and myths. Slow and gentle, mourning doves breathe calm into the garden, a contrast to the kerfuffle of crows circling in search of prey. Are they peacemakers, justices of the garden's menagerie of colors? Not just cardinals, goldfinches, but downy woodpeckers, blue jays, squirrels, chipmunks, foxes, faces ringed with fur like lions' manes. We see her in all these creatures. We hear her in their songs. We recognize her vibrant energy as they race across the creek. They remind us, and she brings us joy within our gloom. The mourning doves are justices of balance, purveyors of peace. Their accompaniment brings hope, restoring harmony in chaos. The mourning doves remind us how to live, how to love. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. The next section of poems written in Arlington is about discoveries and epiphanies. And so here's Jess Stork Glycos reading Poem Without a Destination.
Thank you, Catherine, and thank you, everyone. This is great. So I've been thinking during the pandemic that words are the one thing you don't have to use hand sanitizer on, because that's the great thing about poems. They can travel wherever they want without borders. Sometimes I send poems to my friends for their birthday when they're far away, and it's the one thing that you don't have to disinfect when it gets to the other end. So this is Poem Without a Destination. A poem stepped onto a bus. It didn't know its destination as it left behind sturdy shelves in one more page books. It sailed towards Fairfax Drive. This poem forgot a map. But it craved the rumble of the engine, the beep of smart cards, the clink of coins, feeding into the metal belly of the bus. The door clicked open and shut, and giddiness bubbled up the poem's spine. As words sailed past, it left its book behind, and tires pulled it from the confines of two covers. The bus cruised past Arlington Arts, Lubber Run Amphitheater, Iota, Central Library, and a smile curled on the poem's lips. Thank you.
Thank you, Jess. By the way, Jess took off work tonight to be here with us, so double thanks for that. Okay, Written in Arlington also contains a number of poems written by tourists and visitors, maybe some of the people riding the bus. And Our next poet, who is no longer with us, we're going to hear a poem about Arlington National Cemetery, which is where one of the places that the visitors come. So our next poet is Hilary Tom. She was a Malaysian immigrant to America and who published 8 books of poetry and left an indelible mark on Arlington's poetry community, our schools, and on the greater DC poetry world. Her poem, Cemeteries, about Arlington Cemetery, is being read by her close friend, Miles David Moore.
Good evening, everyone. Hilary Tom was a wonderful poet, a wonderful friend, and a wonderful mentor. And any of you who were lucky enough to know her know that is a very inadequate description of just what a vital force she was in the lives of everyone she knew. But anyway, as Katherine said, this is called Cemeteries. My daughters hold their breath when we drive past the cemetery, a game they learned from other children, not knowing the ritual rises from medieval belief. Breath is soul, and the devil lurks waiting to take it away. Even today, we say, "Bless you," politely, when someone sneezes, unaware we are warding a soul loosed from body by explosive exhalation. My daughters scream, "Drive faster!" on sighting Arlington Cemetery, knowing this will be a marathon for their lungs. They stop breathing for the challenge or something to do to break the tedium of car and road, or for the comfort of pretending the dead want something from us still.
Thank you, Miles. That was poet Hilary Tom. And now for another perspective on Arlington Cemetery, here's Susan Notar, who is reading What is Lost.
So this poem is What is Lost, 1987. It's about a dear family friend of mine and my family's when I was a child, who was officer in the military and also gay, which at the time, most of you know, would be a problem, and so he therefore had to live a lie. What is Lost, 1987. Trees like sentinels filed past our car window, white-iced in morning. Hearses like crows circled and stopped, leaving him finally in the officers' section at Arlington. Once he fed his children and me French toast with just a dash of Kahlua, smoked cigars at the local swim club, wore teeny tiny Speedos while the other dads sported baggy swim trunks, brushed his pilot wings with sunlight, flew our families to Puerto Vallarta. How our bodies fail us. His diminished into a shadow of a shadow. His mind departed like a sand castle, a wave washes away. To obtain a just burial, his family said cancer when they meant AIDS. Or here, I've had no sun-gun salute, and no flag-covered casket.
Thank you, Susan. The next section of Written in Arlington follows the immigrant experience of our community, and so next we're going to hear from Martha Sanchez-Lowry reading Walking an Immigrant's Arlington.
As shocking as it may seem, my mother and I arrived alone in 1966, January 6th. And nothing has changed much in a way in terms of what goes on. Ça peut change. Walking an Immigrant's Arlington. It is here we arrived with red check suitcases full of paintings and the Virgin. Art and faith survive it all. Alone, we survived that first unknown ice storm I had only seen capping our Andes, more crystal than cold. our minds aflame because in those days they had made bonfires of the houses in the city, closed the bridges while intolerance exploded in the streets. Someone shot 3 great men in one historic blur, and we were now here, as people walked barefooted for and against need, crossing those same bridges that had seen Lincoln review the troops that united north to south. Those bridges I had crossed ever so slowly, admiring the golden lions on the edge of the afternoon, almost alive, guarding the city and river. We lived near that sprinkling of white crosses, blocks and blocks of white interspersed with green, that place where we dare that so generous notion of freedom, and in front of a pawn shop, by derailed roads that had grown wild with weeds and old canal trails, and it never occurred to me to take my topaz cross or any other jewel to that pawn shop, nor to dream that I wouldn't always have that overgrown field to play in. And what I do remember is the silence then and later, the wide empty roads that here too replaced what was green and flowering, the old abandoned wooden houses sleeping under moss near the river, the charm of a small town that grew unhinged and now begs for change at the post office, that constancy of the river and the bridge which still continues dividing and separating north and south, this and that, all that is so lost in the past, each day visited anew by someone creating memory, while I who arrived here so many years ago saw it change slowly and in an instant. Thank you.
Thanks, Madeline. Written in Arlington contains poems originally written in 4 languages, English, Spanish, Russian, and Hindi. And so now we're going to hear a poem originally written in Hindi by Sushmita Mazumdar, who, as I mentioned earlier, designed the book's cover. And here's the poem, At Summer Camp.
Hello everyone. I will read the English translation first and then the original in Hindi. At summer camp, Desi, Indian, adjective, local, indigenous, unadulterated or pure, as in Desi Ghee. Noun, a person of Indian, Pakistani or Bangladeshi birth or descent who lives abroad. Mama, in summer camp today, a new staff member came to play. Miss Maheen's hair is so long. Miss Maheen's eyes are so beautiful. Miss Maheen wears a diamond in her nose. Is Miss Maheen Indian? Is she like me? Hello, Miss Maheen. She talks so much about you. Miss Maheen's hair is so long. Miss Maheen's eyes are so beautiful. Miss Maheen wears a diamond in her nose. Is Miss Maheen Indian? Is she like her? Oh, little Ananya, I am just Desi, just like you, see? But a little bit bigger. Hair just like yours, but a little bit longer. Eyes like yours, black as black. Diamond in my nose and gold rings in your ears. I'm born in Arlington, went to school here. Though Mummy and Papa are Pakistani, I'm a little Pakistani and a little American, but fully Desi, just like you, see? So in Hindi, it's called Summer Camp में. मम्मा आज समर कैंप में एक नई स्टाफ मेंबर आई. मिस महीन के बाल कितने लंबे, मिस महीन के आँख कितनी सुंदर, मिस महीन के नाक में हीरा. क्या मिस महीन इंडियन है, मेरे जैसी है? हेलो मिस महीन, ये आपके बारे में कितना बोलती है. मिस महीन के बाल इतने लंबे, मिस महीन के आँख कितने सुंदर, मिस महीन के नाक में हीरा. क्या मिस महीन इंडियन है, उसके जैसी है? अरे छोटी सी अनान्या, मैं तो हूँ देसी, बिल्कुल तुम्हारे जैसी, सिर्फ थोड़ी बड़ी. बाल तुम्हारे जैसे पर थोड़ी और लंबी, आंखें तुम्हारे जैसी काली काली, मेरे नाक में हीरा, तुम्हारे कानों में बाली. मैं आर्लिंगटन में जन्मी, स्कूल पढ़ी, मम्मी पापा तो है पाकिस्तानी, और मैं थोड़ी पाकिस्तानी और थोड़ी अमरीकी और पूरी देसी, बिल्कुल
way, Jessie. Thank you so much. All right. The next section of the book contains poems largely about Arlington history, including poems set in the neighborhoods of Paul's Hill, Green Valley, and Lyon Village. And then comes the poem that we're going to hear next. It's also about the passage of time. And there's a little story about this poem, because when I started thinking about this project, the project that would eventually become Written in Arlington, I knew of exactly 4 poems about Arlington, and I had written 3 of them myself when I was poet laureate. But this poem, the one you're going to hear next, predates all of those. It came first, and it's the one that I think of as the sort of mother poem of this entire project. It's called I Love Barbie Taylor, T-Mac, and it was written by Miles David Moore, whom many of you may know as the longtime host of Arlington's late lamented Iota Poetry Series. Please welcome Miles David Moore.
This poem commemorates graffiti that used to be on a wall in Shirlington, and as Katherine said, the graffiti read, I love Barbie Taylor, T-Mac. It's official now. T-Mac no longer loves Barbie Taylor. Not for the commuters on I-395 who for 8,000 yesterdays read Passion in 3-foot schoolboy script. Today the bulldozers came, and romantic words became rubble, to be cleared away for the ritual mating of asphalt and earth. But what of real love? Did Barbie and Tease live past demolition or die long before it? Did Tease love leave the wall? Was Barbie's ever there? When Barbie laid azure or emerald or onyx eyes on Tea's declaration, did she roll them in ecstasy or embarrassment? Did Barbie and T find out too late that love can squall and soil itself, or wither in a stranger's wink, or survive the fatal screech of cars against each other? Or did Barbie and T, a couple not perfect but comfortable with their familiarity, see their wall come down with a pang for youth so long gone, so shortly gone, hold hands for the millionth time and wave at T Jr. walking with his first girlfriend? If the earth has an answer, the dozers drown it out. Their burring voices shake the overpass where Todd Loves Tiffany appeared last week, and echo in the park, rustling the oak tree where Isaac has loved Maud 100 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Miles. Directly following I Love Barbie Taylor, T-Mac, in the book, and this is a hard act to follow, comes a poem by our current poet laureate, Karapetkova, called Sweat.
And this poem is for a friend of mine who died way too young of melanoma, and several years after his death, he would appear to me in dreams and visions and sometimes in faces of passerby. Sweat. I saw you one last time, standing on the corner of 26th and Old Dominion. You had become a woman with long red hair, thick and straight. But I knew it was you, still 6'2", the freckles on your face forming a pattern I'd recognize anywhere. We didn't talk. I was in the passenger seat of a car, windows rolled down to smell the spring blossoms. I wanted to stop and ask you what you could recall, cool our memories to make sense of what had happened. But I wasn't the one driving, and you were waiting for someone else. The breeze thick with the sweat of bees. The blossoms so full it would take weeks for the air to clear of their scent.
Thank you, Howard. Next in Written in Arlington comes a series of poems about home and what home means. So here's Dan Brady to read In Washington's Woodlands and Home at Home.
Hello. Both these poems were written in the Claremont neighborhood, but we just moved to Douglas Park, so now I need to write some more poems out home, I guess. So this is In Washington's Woodlands.
I come home from work and again destroy the bird's nest the birds spent the day building on the porch. My house is not your house, birds. Down the hill on the fields, on 4 Mile Run, a bat cracks and a crowd raises its voice. The robins nearby don't flinch, just stare, then depart. As I close the door, leaving it unlocked, I feel the other world behind me, bright and soggy after 2 days of rain, growing into something new. I haven't yet cleaned the dishes from breakfast this morning, and the whole house smells of strawberries, of home. In this way, the morning greets the night. In this way, each day, today continues into tomorrow. And this poem's called Home at Home. Through the windows you can see us, the baby asleep in her crib, the mother playing a game on her tablet, the son reading by flashlight in bed, the father clicking away at his laptop. The siding needs to be replaced and the brick needs pointing, but the house is sturdy enough. She's the one who works, and lately the stress has been getting the best of her. Her hair clogging brushes, stopping the drain. He feels it too, in his teeth. They ache at night from being clenched all day. The boy doesn't seem to notice, and the baby knows nothing different. Home is the space that lives move through together. It's where we are when we're all there, in our mismatched aching, our sobbing joy, our miserable boredom. We have no choice but to accept each other because we make this place together and it is ours. A home is almost always falling apart, crumbling slowly in so many ways, but we are always busy making little fixes, keeping up appearances. The baby cries and you see us all pause, look up, listen, and wait. It lasts only a moment before she settles back in, and we settle back in, and the house settles all around us.
Thanks, Dan. You know, Arlington boundaries are kind of, for me anyway, a little bit more theoretical than real because so many of us spend so much of our time at locations all around in D&B. And so the anthology includes poems that sort of encompass this greater sense of Arlington, this greater sense of neighborhood. So here's Miles David Moore again with a poem from the DC side of the Potomac. Hopper, Cod Evening.
And so as Katherine said, you have to cross the Potomac to see the inspiration for this poem. It's in the National Gallery of Art, and it is a painting by Edward Hopper called Cape Cod Evening. Only the dog is alive, standing alertly in the brown marsh grass, ears and nose quivering, pointed toward the distance. The dog is indifferent to the squatting man. The grudging, stretched-out hand is bereft of treats or anything a waxwork couldn't give. The cross-armed woman slumps against the window, straight-jacketed in her hard teal dress, wishing the man, the dog, the world were dead. The blue spruce forest crowds against the house. The closest tree lifts a branch against the clapboard, tasting it, judging if it's time to move. Thank you.
Thank you, Miles. The latter part of Written in Arlington concerns itself with kind of slowing down and watching time and the seasons pass. And so here we're going to hear from Sushmita Mazumdar again with Monday Morning and Chai.
Monday morning and chai. You go change the world while I sit here on my back porch steps, having my morning chai with the oak, the black-eyed Susan, and the chives. You go negotiate complex deals for peace and stability, and I look around to try and find where the cicadas hide when they sing their mesmerizing song. You go educate and inform the wide, wild masses, and I'll be here watching the squirrels do their morning warm-ups on the fence. And when you finally someday sit down take a breath and enjoy the fruits of your labor, I'll still be here, basically, doing nothing much, but I can make you a chai.
Thank you, Steve. Almost 30 years ago, I lived in this neighborhood just across George Mason Drive. So now I'm going to read one of my poems in the collection because the poem starts right here in Lubber Run Park after a terrible storm when giant trees were ripped up at the root and they laid across the path for a long, long time. And an earlier version of the bridge, which is now washed away again, was washed away, at least, maybe not the first time, but it was washed away then as well. This poem is called Evening Storm, Ballston. All last night, the sirens shrieked. Fire trucks skittered like water bugs, their plastic eyelids conning streets scorched and rivered by the storm. Daylight reveals buds, limbs, entire trees shattered where they stand. Already chainsaws roll their metallic R's. In my neighbor's yard, a fresh-cut stump, the raw wood cool, wet, smooth to the touch. 26 rings, 26 years of xylem and phloem ferrying food and water for the care and feeding of this one tree. It might have stood for years to come, shading this house, shading the houses that followed this one, all the houses and the tree itself pretending that the shading of houses is the purpose set out for a tree. Surely there's some purpose for everything. Surely what we do here has meaning. Why else would we have crept last night from our hiding places to flit along streets littered with downed trees and power lines, strange nocturnal insects marking the darkened blocks with the scent of our headlights? And our next poem continues this same theme. Here's Holly again with Donaldson Run.
This poem is for my daughter, who's now a preteen, and got no time for me, but once upon a time she did. Donaldson Run. The day was not ours, but we were in it, up to our knees in the water of a small creek that feeds a famous river, one that touched the feet of men and women who went down in history. Perhaps they walked this small creek too, but it is not written. Likewise, our names are not in any book, but we write them on the rocks with water and leave before they evaporate. We take only things that have already fallen, dead leaves, the tuft of a dandelion blossom, and sail them downstream, watching until they snag on a stick or slip into the current. We are our own witnesses. No one sees this but us, not even the sun cooling its head behind a cloud.
Thanks, Holly. You know, when I received the submissions for Written in Arlington, there was a surprising number of poems about an animal that I often see when I'm walking along in the evening, foxes. In fact, there were so many fox poems that I couldn't include all of them in the book. But here's one by Dan Brady called Neighbor.
When it snows, a fox sleeps against my house. I see him in the morning when I go out.
So one of the really great joys about working with the poems that people submitted for Written in Arlington was discovering how poems written by people who had never even met each other can resonate with one another. And I think you're hearing that quality tonight because not all of us know each other outside of this event. The final section of the book and the final handful of poems takes us through seasons of the year, starting in winter, and all of the poems from many different poets sort of come together to form a kaleidoscope of image and sound. And we're going to start with Susan Notar and Springtime in Winter.
Thank you. This poem was part of a project. It's called ekphrastic poetry, where artists are inspired by other artists. So I was paired with a painter who had to paint a poem from a painting from my poem, and it's a series of 3 haiku. Springtime and winter. Ice on small branches, on trees near the metro stop. In fall, kissed golden. My hands turn purple, without gloves. No damn bus. Soup awaits at home. Persephone's gift. My garden sings with green light. Make my heart anew. Snow crunches underfoot. Diamonds glisten at midnight. Sleep, sleep, my dear love.
Thank you, Susan. Next we come to summer and its particular pleasures, and so we're going to hear from Cian Rennie with the Pool Poem.
The pool poem. The water rushes through me, cleaning out my eyes and ears like the cotton swabs my mother used to carry in her purse. My pores are open when I surface. The air burns my nostrils and fills my head like the steam from a steamer. It makes me sweat onion peels, especially after that first dip in the water. The chemical washes the grime from my fingernails and overpowers me, as if this is all there is to life, nothing else to recognize, except that the line for food is getting shorter, and I can rely on my long legs to get me there before the family of 5 does. The pool is a communal bath. This time of year, you should call it a hot tub or a boiling pot. Sidewalks serve as stoves, and you can smell the hot dogs and hamburgers. When people walk by, you can hear the sizzle and pop of them cooking, of the grease slithering down to the brown pavement and into the pot. A congregation of people young and old, small children run and scream and bob and weave through the lifeguard's tower, over the golden rainbow of tanned bodies and down the wonder slide. Seniors swim and swish in the shallow end, smiles facing forward and arms brushing the clouds, all of them dressed in purple waists, riding on orange snakes on the journey of a lifetime. I wear the same things as they do, but no doubt I look like a boiled egg with the way the sun shines on me and the way I struggle in 6 feet. Bubbles broil off the hair from a big, beefy back, and it smells like barbecue. The pool is a tool for renewal. First we cleanse the water, then we cleanse ourselves. You fill the craters in your mind with ice cream and applesauce. With the radio turned up high, you can drown out your sorrows and try something new. People of different flavors bring their spices with them. They all blend so perfectly. So we mix and we bake and we sing and we laugh, knowing that even when we leave and the pool is drained, the smell of our potluck will follow us home and tuck us into bed tonight. My tongue cradles the memory of every plate between each taste bud. Sometimes I can still taste it when I smell smoke from a backyard. Thank you.
Thank you, Cian. You know, we did a group reading for Written in Arlington on Zoom way back in January, I think, and it was one of our first readings, and so I was a little nervous about having enough poems prepared. So in addition to their own work, I asked each poet to plan to read a poem from the collection that they didn't write, and not one, but 2 poets showed up that day planning to read this next poem, Madeline Rosenberg's Dandelion.
Thank you all for leaving your homes. Okay, Dandelion. I wanted to show you how to press one ragged nail into dandelion flesh, how to split the stem and inch your finger up until you reach the flower's fur. Leave the green stalk in curls, like Marie Antoinette's, and your fingers sticky with summer's milk.
Thanks, Madeline. And now we're going to hear an August poem by the late John Ellsberg, who was a poet, reviewer, editor, and historian who wrote over a dozen books and chapbooks of poetry and hosted open mics all over the DMV for at least a quarter century. So Holly is going to read his poem, Virginia, in late August.
Virginia in late August. There is a softness in Virginia light in late August. The light promises of the good days of autumn to come. It is the reward for enduring all that sweltering heat of midsummer. It does not pretend to have dark shadows. It is the light of unwinding, of having a beer on the reclaimed front porch, feet propped on the rail. It is the light that gives a distance to all those small defeats of the past, a softness that comes from that coolness after mowing, that makes any virtue as easy as the curl of the bead on the glass at rest.
Thanks, Holly. That's John Ellsberg. And right on schedule for fall, a couple of poems by Katherine E. September, Arlington, Virginia, and Overnight, Maples Turn into Pumpkins.
Thank you. It's so special to be here tonight, and the line from Sian's poem just jumps out at me. Tonight's like a tool for renewal, to be in person with each of you. This first poem is set in September 2001. September, Arlington, Virginia. A long time ago, near the end, our old dog limped through fallen May apples beside Windy Run. Each night I brushed him, checked for new lumps, asked, "Is tomorrow the day?" His paws smelled like cider. That last day, he stood still for a long time, looked toward children in the park, then followed me to the car. Each night I listened, helicopters thumped up and down Potomac. Fighter jets roared high, invisible, even when I could see the stars. When it rained, they sounded, muffled, close. All night long, important people were making important decisions. And this is a fall poem, here on the cusp of fall, on what feels like the first really fall-like night. Overnight pumpkins turn in, let me start again. Overnight maples turn into pumpkins, and the dog disappears for hours in his leaf-filled yard. Herds squirrels corner to corner. No acorns will be harvested on his watch. Too tired for his nighttime walk, he puts himself to bed at 8. Tonight, as the sun sets, wasps race to their nest, angry that their time is almost over. 7 deer tiptoe single file from their feeding ground to their sleeping ground. A full moon shines silver on the batwing begonias. And then it happens, you are there. The dog, overjoyed, brings his ball, his stick, anything to keep you. It's like that other sunset. For a long time, you had been too ill to look out the window. Suddenly, you saw the tops of the oaks. They glowed yellow. You asked, "How can I bear such beauty?" Thank you.
Thank you, Katherine. We have only one more poem tonight, but before I read that, I want to take a moment now to recognize some of the Written in Arlington poets who aren't on stage, but who are in the audience. I know at least I see Greg Goose here and Naomi's here, and if there's anybody else here, please stand up, because you are as much a part of this reading as we are. So please, let's give a round of applause to all the poets. As I said, I'm going to read one more poem to close the evening. But first of all, I'd like to thank Katie Crystal for coming out from the Arlington County Board, everybody at Arlington's Cultural Affairs Division, especially Dan Brady, who is here as a poet, but he wears another hat as well, sort of coordinating poetry programs for Arlington. I'd like to thank the tech team here at Lubber Run, led by Chris Cooley, and our host, current Arlington Poet Laureate Karapetkova, our marvelous poet readers, some of whom have driven a considerable way to get here tonight, and also our written in Arlington publisher, Richard Peabody of Paycock Press. Please see him after the reading to get your copy of Written in Arlington, which, by the way, would look great on your coffee table. It would look great on the bedside table of your guest room. It makes a great holiday gift. It makes a terrific teacher appreciation gift. So please support poetry in Arlington. And if you decide after tonight that you want more copies, you can also find them at trade routes in Westover. And of course, thank you all, the audience, for coming out tonight in the chilly weather to sit and listen to poetry under the stars. I'm going to close tonight with what's actually the first poem in the book. The poet is the late Karen Wood, a member of the Menachem Indian Nation, and the author of two beautiful collections of poetry. And this poem is called First Light. First Light by Karen Wood. At this hour, who could discern where land ends, or water, where creek becomes bay, bay becomes river, and stretches across to a blue verge of Maryland, all the way black now, invisible. Through July's haze, the first light is a brush stroke of gray seeping in. Ducks totter up the beach, short, bow-legged sailors. Over the water, duck blinds loom as improbable creatures who graze a pale field. From the marina around the bend, two crabbers set out. Their diesel chugs reverberate as prows cut new ways. Mockingbirds swoop, flash their shoulders like women advertising summer dresses. Herons cast themselves down. What matters? At the end, we become what we have loved. Each thing that transfixed us in the rapture of its moment, its grace of its own making, ours the same. We grow around the land as it grew around us, and dawn crosses over us, whether asleep in nests or births or in the ground becoming life again. Here is the moment, here, among herons, ospreys, morning, river, I believe in this light. It is the light of the world. Thank you so much, everyone. This has been a dream of mine ever since this anthology came out. Thank you all the poets. Thank you for coming to hear our poetry. Please drive safely and good night. Thank you.